Thanks for joining us. We'll begin with your name and a short description of what you're here to talk about.
So my name is Debra Schafrath, and I'm here to talk about my personal food trends that I'm following.
Awesome. And can you tell us what food trends you are following?
So I am following two different trends. The first I've been doing for a very long time, and that is gluten-free.
Okay.
And the second is a plant-based diet.
Nice. What exactly does it mean to you to be plant-based or gluten-free for anyone who maybe wants further clarification?
So gluten-free is basically where you do not take in any type of wheat or it's gluten proteins in your body that are usually coming from wheat or rye or grains like that. And so you don't eat foods that have any gluten. The plant-based is where you are shifting your diet towards more foods that are from plants and limiting the amount of animal protein that you're getting or animal products or artificial ingredients. So that's, yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like a lot of research went into this decision. What did you learn any surprising facts while you were doing any research?
Well, I think maybe first I'll start with how it all got started, because that kind of led itself to research that I did. So a few years ago, I noticed that I was having my stomach was feeling yucky when I was eating. And I had some allergy testing done that came back noting that I have an allergic reaction to gluten, wheat, and some other foods as well. And at the time, I was advised to just cut wheat, gluten, cold turkey. Like just cut it out of your diet. And I thought, oh my gosh, how am I ever gonna do this? But I did it, and I felt amazing overnight. It was such a profound difference of how I felt after I ate that I've just stuck with that for more than 2 years now. The plant-based came a little bit of a different way because as I am approaching my vintage years, I was seeing when I go to see my doctor, I'm asking a lot of questions, and are there things that I should be thinking about or preparing myself for as I go into the phase of entering my 50s as opposed to being in my 40s. And she had noted that my doctor had noted in her practice, she had found that most of her patients did really well when they started to slowly transition towards a plant-based diet. And so because I love cooking, I love experimenting with different foods, I love researching all types of things like that, I tried it out. And so during last year, I started doing a lot of research and found, oh my gosh, there's some interesting things that I could try out. And I found that it was an easier shift than one would think. But you'd asked about some surprising things, and there were a few things that were really surprising to me, 3 in fact. One is the fallacy that that your protein has to come from meats. And in fact, protein does not have to come from meats. Meats tend to be a really good source for iron and protein. However, you can also get a similar impact on your body from plants, such as, and not plants, but nuts, beans, legumes, things like that. So that was one of the biggest wows, because it's easy to throw in chickpeas or lentils in something and I still get the same amount of protein that I need. The second thing that was a bit surprising to me when I started uncovering it and reading different research was that the research that's been done on foods is actually how badly dairy can impact the body and animal proteins in general. And so if you're looking for a way to stabilize hormones and things like that, which women when we enter into our 50s and 60s are really trying to do. You don't want to be artificially putting hormones into your body. Not that there's a substantial amount, but the point is I was surprised by that research that I came across from various sources on just the negative impact of animal protein and most importantly, dairy on the body and body function. The third thing that was just really shocking to me as I started uncovering things was how horrific the animal industry has become to our environment. Things are much different than the days when my grandfather Schafrath had his dairy farm. And now with the industrialization of farming and the mass production of CO2 emissions from farming, and it's shocking. And not only that, the inhumane treatment of animals, that's just another thing that I was really, really surprised by. I guess I had rose-colored glasses that when I went to purchase meats, that when they were saying that they were, cage-free environments and grass-fed, that meant all wondrous things for happy animals, but in fact, it doesn't. So it was another bit of information that I uncovered that was really surprising. And just has led me even more to my position of, that I am in a privileged place to make a decision about the food that I make and to make a conscious decision of what I don't want in my body. And I am privileged to say, no, thank you, and I will go for this. So that was some interesting research.
Those are very interesting things to hear about. I was reading a little bit about that when I was reading The Omnivore's Dilemma, and it's crazy how inhumane the food industry can get.
Well, it's become. It wasn't always that way, but it's become increasingly so. Yeah.
Moving on to a bit lighter of a topic, could you tell us a little bit about alternatives to dairy, meat, and gluten that you decided to stop eating?
So there are a ton of alternatives that are available now that may not have been available 5, 10, 15 years ago, or not as easily available. So for example, there's a ton of soy. If you're able to eat soy, there's a ton of soy-based products that are really great, and they're high in protein, and they're low in fat if you're looking at your fat intake. And that would be things like tofu and tempeh. And often I will use that in place of meats. There's also like jackfruit, which is a type of fruit that it shreds kind of like chicken. It does not taste like chicken, but the texture is a little bit like chicken if you're looking to make burritos or things like that. In place of dairy milk, I often use almond milk, especially if I'm cooking, but oat milk is nice too. And I have found that oat milk ice cream is amazing. And it doesn't taste all yucky in your mouth. There isn't a residual milky taste in your mouth when you eat oat-based ice cream. There are some delicious coconut milk yogurts that are out there that are great substitutes. You wouldn't want to eat a whole lot of them because they're highly caloric, but they're really great. So more on the raw side of things, if I'm looking to make something kind of creamy, I often use raw cashews that I grind up, or I'll use tahini, and that makes a really nice cream base. Also, it's amazing what you can do with white beans, like cannoli beans or navy beans. Those ground up serve really nice, like in a lasagna instead of ricotta. I have found that yeast flakes are my best friend. They're really high in vitamin B6, B12, all of your Bs really are covered nicely with yeast flakes, and that adds a nice cheesy taste to stuff without putting dairy cheese or goat cheeses or things like that. Ground flax is amazing as an egg substitute, and it's really good for the body. And then there's so many different substitutes as you can see.
Sure.
I try to avoid cornstarch also. I don't put a lot of corn in my body if I can help it, because it's just everywhere. It's prolific. So like arrowroot is a really nice thickener. Those are some good, I guess, substitutes.
That's amazing.
So yeah, you can do almost anything. It's just things don't, you just have to, I was talking to someone the other day and she was saying, I just love meatballs. And I was like, well, I do too. And so I just have to take when I make meatballs that have like mushrooms and lots of veggies and walnuts and things like that, I just can't have in my mind that it's going to taste like a veal, beef, pork meatball. It's going to taste different, but really delicious if you're into experimenting different types of flavors and foods and so forth. There's a lot of choices.
That's a great point to bring up. Speaking of meatballs, which is something you make, what is something you really enjoy making or eating that is plant-based or gluten-free?
So a couple of years ago, one of my really close friends had given me a gift of this book called cookbook called The First Mess, as in Make Things Messy, by Laura Wright. She's Canadian, so what's not to love about Canadians?
Yeah.
But the cookbook, and I started making a lot of dishes out of it before I shifted to a plant-based diet. But her recipes are amazing. And now that I solely am plant-based, I appreciate even more her recipes. So things like her crispy tofu, oh my gosh, her sticky tempeh with coconut rice. She has this chopped dill salad with like chopped cauliflower and red cabbage and kale with a dill dressing that tastes like you have a feta dressing with dill. It's amazing. And it, like, you eat it and you feel just very healthy afterwards. Like, just body feels really good. So those are some of my favorites, but my go-to is definitely Laura Wright, First Mess, that cookbook, and her blog on thefirstmess.com is amazing. I highly recommend it.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else to add in general?
The thing I think I would add is that a lot of times food is an ingrained part of who we are, totally, right? And sometimes there's a hesitation to try things that we haven't tried before. And I would, like my doctor had said to me, just try it. Like, if you don't like it, it's fine. But ultimately, if the more and more that we move to eating more fruit and vegetables and things that aren't harming our environment, the better that it is for the environment, but also the better it is for our bodies, our mind, and all of that sort of stuff. So I would encourage people to just try incorporating more vegetables into the diet. And if you don't like it, you don't like it, but just try it. Try it. You may see, you may like it. Dr. Seuss. Just trying is the first step to making some change, and who knows, you might end up really enjoying what you try.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for this interview.
You're welcome. Thank you.